Alessandra Wilmore had always possessed an unshakable determination to uncover the truth. As one of New York City's most promising investigative journalists, her name had quickly become synonymous with fearlessness, a woman unafraid of diving into scandals that others only whispered about. Her fiery spirit, paired with striking sapphire eyes and a cascade of rich auburn hair, often made her both admired and envied within Manhattan's elite circles. Tonight, however, Alessandra felt entirely out of place. She stood awkwardly amidst glittering gowns and perfectly tailored suits at the opulent gala marking the grand opening of Hawthorne Tower, the latest ambitious project of Holden Hawthorne, a billionaire CEO known for his ruthless demeanor and enigmatic allure. Alessandra had never enjoyed mingling among the ultra-rich, finding their superficial conversations tiresome. But tonight was different. Her editor had insisted she attend, hinting at rumors of a major scandal involving Holden Hawthorne himself. Determined to uncover something meaningful, Alessandra discreetly wandered toward the balcony, seeking fresh air and perhaps a quieter spot to listen and observe. The evening was cool, the city's vibrant lights stretching endlessly below, reflecting the quiet pulse of life far away from the extravagant party behind her. She paused near an ornate marble column, hidden from view, when suddenly a pair of familiar voices drifted softly from the adjacent balcony. Alessandra recognized Holden's deep, authoritative tone immediately. Beside him stood a man she vaguely knew as Beckett Kingsley, the influential family lawyer and Holden's most trusted confidant. "You're risking too much," Beckett's voice hissed in a harsh whisper, anxiety clear in his tone. "If anyone finds out what you've done, the empire your family built could collapse overnight." Holden's response was calm, almost indifferent, a stark contrast to Beckett's palpable panic. "No one will find out. I've ensured everything remains buried. The public sees only what I want them to see." "But Alessandra Wilmore is here," Beckett argued nervously. "You know her reputation. She's dangerous, Holden. She doesn't stop until she uncovers the truth." Holden scoffed lightly. "She's a minor inconvenience at most." Hearing her name startled Alessandra, causing her heart to pound against her chest. Eagerly leaning closer, desperate to understand more, her delicate silver bracelet suddenly caught against the marble edge, clinking sharply and echoing into the silence of the balcony. Instantly, Holden's head snapped around, his intense emerald eyes locking directly onto hers. Alessandra froze, her breath catching sharply, realizing her hiding spot had been compromised. Holden's expression darkened, determination and calculation flickering rapidly across his features. Without hesitation, he swiftly moved toward her, covering the short distance with predatory elegance. Alessandra felt the impulse to retreat, but before she could utter a single word of explanation or defense, Holden's strong hand gripped her waist firmly yet gently, pulling her suddenly and unexpectedly toward him. Her protest died on her lips as he leaned in quickly, capturing her mouth in a bold, possessive kiss that stole her breath entirely. It was a shocking gesture, meant to silence her, to prevent questions or accusations in front of the other guests, who now watched curiously from a distance. But as their lips pressed together, Holden felt something he hadn't anticipated, a deep and sudden spark, like lightning striking deep inside him. The heat of Alessandra's lips was intoxicating, pulling him deeper than he'd intended. Equally stunned, Alessandra fought an internal battle. She should have pushed him away immediately, but something about the taste of Holden's mouth, warm and commanding, completely overwhelmed her. Her heartbeat accelerated wildly, confusion mingling with unexpected desire as she unconsciously found herself responding, her lips softly parting under the confident demand of his. After a moment that felt like an eternity, Holden finally broke the kiss, pulling back just slightly, his eyes darkened with surprise and something more complex, uncertainty. Guests around them whispered excitedly, clearly interpreting the kiss as evidence of a secret romance, oblivious to the truth behind the intimate act. Alessandra, cheeks flushed from embarrassment and fury, raised her gaze sharply to Holden's face. "What the hell was that?" she demanded in a trembling whisper, anger flashing brilliantly in her blue eyes. Holden's expression quickly returned to its usual composed mask. Yet, behind that facade, Alessandra could see the brief flicker of genuine regret. "I had to silence you," he admitted bluntly, voice low and careful. "You heard too much." She laughed bitterly, taking a step back and brushing her hair behind her ear nervously. "If you think a kiss will stop me from uncovering your secrets, Holden, you're gravely mistaken." His gaze held hers steadily, the intensity of it sending a shiver down her spine. "It wasn't my intention to silence you permanently," he replied quietly, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "But perhaps it bought me enough time to explain myself, to ask for your patience before you rushed to destroy me." Alessandra raised her chin defiantly, curiosity and suspicion fighting within her heart. "Why should I give you even one more minute? You just publicly humiliated me." Holden's jaw tightened briefly, and he stepped closer again, his voice becoming softer, unexpectedly vulnerable. "Because if you expose what you heard without knowing the full story, innocent people will suffer. Lives will be ruined, people who don't deserve punishment." Her resolve faltered momentarily. Alessandra studied Holden's expression carefully, searching for deception but seeing only earnestness, an unfamiliar, troubling vulnerability in a man famous for his coldness. Her instincts warred fiercely with logic, confusion and doubt clouding her judgment. Seeing her hesitation, Holden gently took her hand, his thumb brushing tenderly over her skin in a surprisingly comforting gesture. "Give me 1 month, Alessandra," he pleaded softly, eyes intense with sincerity. 30 days to prove to you who I really am, and to show you the truth behind what you overheard." Alessandra hesitated again, her mind screaming warnings against trusting someone like Holden Hawthorne, yet her heart inexplicably drawn toward his earnest plea. She had spent her life seeking truth, but now the possibility that there might be another side to this enigmatic billionaire intrigued her deeply. Slowly, cautiously, she pulled her hand away, exhaling softly as she finally gave her answer, 30 days, Holden. No more. And if I find out you're lying?" "I'm not," he interrupted firmly, relief flickering briefly in his eyes before disappearing behind his carefully constructed mask again. "You'll see." As Holden turned to rejoin his guests, Alessandra stood frozen, touching her lips softly, still feeling the imprint of his kiss and wondering just how dangerous this truth might become, and how quickly she might lose herself along the way. The morning after the gala, Alessandra awoke feeling restless and unsettled, still haunted by Holden's unexpected kiss. Her fingertips subconsciously traced her lips, recalling vividly the intensity with which he'd silenced her. She hated herself for admitting, even privately, that the kiss had stirred something deeply buried within her, something she'd never felt before. Shaking herself free from her lingering thoughts, Alessandra dressed quickly, pulling her long auburn hair into a sleek ponytail and slipping into professional attire that masked her confusion behind an air of confidence. Arriving at the bustling newsroom, she was determined to lose herself in work, pushing aside all thoughts of Holden Hawthorne. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The moment she sat at her desk, a commotion erupted around the office entrance. Alessandra turned sharply, feeling a strange flutter of anxiety in her chest as she saw Holden stride confidently through the doors. He looked impeccable as ever in his dark suit, exuding power and charisma, instantly commanding the attention of everyone in the newsroom. He approached her desk directly, ignoring the hushed whispers and curious stares of her colleagues. Alessandra felt her pulse quicken, irritation mingling with embarrassment as she stood up abruptly. "Mr. Hawthorne," she greeted him coolly, eyes narrowed slightly. "To what do I owe the unexpected honor?" He met her gaze without hesitation, his voice steady and calm. "I believe we had an agreement. 30 days, remember?" She crossed her arms defensively, aware of the numerous eyes watching them closely. "Yes, I remember. But I didn't expect you'd personally come here to start your explanations." A faint smile briefly crossed Holden's lips, gone so quickly Alessandra wondered if she'd imagined it. "Given the seriousness of what you overheard, I prefer directness. Shall we speak somewhere private?" Aware she had little choice but to follow through with their agreement, Alessandra nodded, silently leading him toward a quiet conference room at the far end of the office. Closing the door firmly behind them, she turned sharply to confront him. "You caused quite a spectacle last night," she accused him immediately, unable to keep anger from seeping into her voice. "You made me look like a fool in front of dozens of people." Holden took a slow, deep breath, stepping closer but maintaining careful distance. "I apologize sincerely for embarrassing you, Alessandra. But I didn't see another way. You were about to confront me openly, I acted impulsively." She studied him carefully, searching his expression for sincerity or deceit, but found only an unfamiliar honesty reflected back at her. Reluctantly, she softened slightly. "Why exactly am I giving you 30 days? What do you plan to show me?" Holden's emerald eyes darkened with seriousness as he stepped closer still, lowering his voice slightly. "My family has secrets, dangerous secrets. You heard enough to misunderstand my intentions entirely. But if you trust me enough to grant this time, I'll show you the reality behind the rumors, the truth I've fought to protect." "You expect me to trust you without proof?" Alessandra asked skeptically, raising a challenging eyebrow. "You're asking a lot." He sighed softly, clearly weighing his next words carefully. "I'm aware of your reputation as someone who seeks justice and truth. Despite appearances, I respect that immensely. But certain truths are complicated. If revealed prematurely, innocent people will be hurt." "Innocent people," she echoed cautiously. "Are you including yourself in that category?" "No," Holden answered quietly, voice tinged with regret. "I made mistakes, serious mistakes, but not the ones you suspect. And while I'm far from innocent, others around me are. If I can't convince you of anything else, believe that I'm trying to shield them from undeserved punishment." Alessandra felt uncertainty coil within her chest, battling fiercely against her instinctive distrust. She couldn't deny the sincerity radiating from Holden's eyes. It unsettled her deeply. "What exactly do you suggest we do during these 30 days, she finally asked softly, curious yet guarded. Holden took another step forward, close enough now that she caught the subtle scent of his cologne, a blend of sandalwood and something sharply masculine that distracted her momentarily. "Spend time with me, observe my actions. Accompany me publicly and privately. Let me show you the truth through experience, not just words." "You want me to shadow you?" she asked incredulously, unable to hide her surprise. "Everywhere you go." "Precisely," Holden replied firmly, his voice full of conviction. "Every meeting, every event, even private matters where appropriate. Complete transparency." Alessandra hesitated, sensing danger in agreeing to this arrangement. Holden Hawthorne was known as ruthless, calculating, yet right now, in this quiet room, he felt more vulnerable than threatening. Her journalist's instinct urged her to accept the offer, understanding this opportunity might never come again. Her heart, however, warned caution. "Fine," she said eventually, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll shadow you. But understand something clearly, I'm not easily fooled. One sign you're deceiving me, and the deal is off." Holden nodded solemnly, his expression serious yet strangely hopeful. "Agreed. I wouldn't expect anything less from you." Their eyes met again, silence stretching briefly between them, filled with an unspoken tension neither quite understood. Alessandra finally broke eye contact, feeling strangely exposed beneath his penetrating gaze. "Then I suppose you should start explaining," she prompted softly. "What exactly happened last night? What were you discussing with Beckett?" Holden's expression darkened slightly, tension returning visibly to his features. "Someone within my family is attempting to sabotage my position as head of the company. That conversation you overheard, it involved protecting my family's legacy from destruction." "Who would do such a thing?" Alessandra questioned, genuine curiosity evident in her voice. He hesitated, clear pain flickering briefly across his face. I suspect someone very close to me, but I need proof before accusing anyone publicly. For the first time, Alessandra glimpsed genuine vulnerability beneath Holden's carefully controlled facade. Her heart softened slightly, an unexpected sympathy stirring within her. Carefully, she reached out, placing a comforting hand on his arm, a gesture that startled them both. "You're placing a lot of trust in me," she murmured softly. "You realize I could still betray you." Holden met her gaze directly, sincerity clear in his emerald eyes. "Yes, Alessandra. But I believe you have more integrity than that. You're bold, honest, qualities rare enough that I'm willing to risk everything by placing faith in you." His words touched something deep within her heart, causing her breath to catch slightly. She withdrew her hand quickly, uncomfortable with the unexpected intimacy of their moment. "Then we start tomorrow," she said briskly, composing herself. "I'll be ready." As she escorted Holden out of the newsroom, aware of dozens of eyes following them closely, Alessandra realized that she'd just willingly entered dangerous territory. She'd intended to expose Holden Hawthorne's secrets, but suddenly, she wondered whether the true danger lay not in discovering his truths, but in losing herself entirely in the process. The following morning, Alessandra arrived at Hawthorne Tower precisely at 8 a.m., feeling equal parts anxiety and curiosity about what awaited her. The grandeur of the building was even more imposing by daylight, a gleaming testament to power, wealth, and influence. She paused briefly at the towering entrance, taking a deep breath to steady herself before stepping through the glass doors into Holden Hawthorne's meticulously curated world. As she entered the building's luxurious lobby, Alessandra was quickly intercepted by Holden's assistant, a polished young woman named Serafina, whose calm efficiency instantly put Alessandra at ease. "Mr. Hawthorne is expecting you, Ms. Wilmore," Serafina said warmly, leading her to a private elevator. Alessandra noticed the subtle curiosity in Serafina's expression, undoubtedly aware of her boss's unusual decision to allow a journalist into his closely guarded life. When the elevator doors opened silently to reveal Holden's executive suite, Alessandra's pulse quickened. Holden stood at the far end of the expansive room, near floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Bathed in early sunlight, his silhouette appeared both powerful and isolated, an intriguing contradiction. Turning slowly to face her, Holden's emerald gaze locked onto hers with quiet intensity. "Good morning, Alessandra. I trust you're prepared to begin." "I am," she answered firmly, trying to keep her voice steady despite the unexpected flutter in her chest at his direct stare. Holden motioned toward the large, polished desk, where a detailed schedule was neatly printed on crisp paper. "This is my agenda today, every meeting, every call. Complete transparency, as promised." Alessandra skimmed the schedule, raising an eyebrow. "This seems extensive." Holden's lips curled slightly into a faint, enigmatic smile. "Transparency requires sacrifice. I intend to show you everything." Their first stop was a high-stakes board meeting, filled with executives whose stern expressions and guarded eyes immediately conveyed the seriousness of their discussions. Alessandra took a seat slightly behind Holden, observing carefully as he navigated complex conversations, each word carefully measured, precise, authoritative. Throughout the meeting, Alessandra noticed Holden repeatedly glancing toward one man, Dorian Whitlock, his uncle and a senior executive known for his ruthlessness. Dorian's cold blue eyes met Holden's frequently, the tension between them palpable. When the meeting ended, Holden discreetly leaned toward Alessandra. "Notice anything unusual?" She nodded slightly. "Your uncle. He didn't seem pleased with your proposals." Holden's jaw tightened briefly. "Dorian has always disagreed with my leadership. But lately, his opposition feels personal." They continued to Holden's next appointment, a charity luncheon he sponsored for disadvantaged children. Alessandra watched quietly as Holden interacted genuinely and warmly with each child, surprising her with the sincerity of his smile and kindness of his gestures. She'd always imagined him detached, cold-hearted. Yet now, she saw glimpses of warmth that contradicted his public reputation. Later, during a private moment between events, Alessandra couldn't contain her curiosity. "You surprised me today. I never imagined you genuinely cared about anyone except yourself." Holden glanced at her, mild hurt flickering briefly across his eyes. "Is it that surprising? I'm not entirely heartless, Alessandra." She softened slightly, feeling unexpectedly guilty. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean that." "You did," Holden interrupted gently. "But I understand your skepticism. My reputation isn't undeserved, though perhaps incomplete." She watched him thoughtfully. "Why do you keep everyone at arm's length, then?" He hesitated, his voice becoming quieter. "Experience. Betrayal comes easily when you let people too close. My family taught me that early on." The sincerity in his tone startled Alessandra, making her reconsider her initial judgments. But before she could ask more, Holden's phone buzzed urgently. He checked the message, his expression hardening instantly. "What's wrong?" Alessandra asked cautiously. "Follow me," he ordered abruptly, heading swiftly toward the private elevators. Alessandra hurried behind him, sensing something significant had happened. Minutes later, they reached an elegant cafe downtown. Holden entered confidently, approaching a secluded corner table where Beckett Kingsley waited anxiously. Beckett glanced sharply at Alessandra but said nothing, deferring to Holden's apparent approval of her presence. "What happened?" Holden asked curtly, voice tense. "Someone leaked confidential documents regarding your recent investments," Beckett explained grimly. "The press got hold of details that portray you negatively. It's spreading quickly." Holden's jaw tightened dangerously, frustration evident. "Who's behind it?" Beckett hesitated, lowering his voice further. "I strongly suspect Dorian. He stands to gain most from discrediting you." Holden's expression darkened, clearly hurt despite his careful mask of composure. Alessandra watched quietly, sympathy stirring deeply within her. She'd witnessed firsthand the icy tension between Holden and Dorian, but hadn't realized how deep their conflict ran. "Damage control?" Holden asked sharply, refocusing quickly. "Already working on it," Beckett assured him. "But this complicates things immensely." Holden exhaled heavily, running a frustrated hand through his dark hair. When Beckett left, Holden finally turned toward Alessandra, raw vulnerability visible in his eyes. "You're seeing my truth clearly now," he admitted bitterly. "My family isn't just complicated, they're ruthless. Dorian's betrayal is only the beginning." Alessandra reached out instinctively, placing a reassuring hand gently upon his arm. "You'll overcome this, Holden. You're stronger than your uncle expects." Holden's gaze softened, his voice quieter. "Am I? Or am I simply good at pretending?" They stood silently, eyes locked, an undeniable connection growing stronger with each shared confession. Alessandra finally broke the silence, heart pounding fiercely. "Why are you letting me see this side of you? Aren't you afraid I'll expose your weaknesses?" "Perhaps," Holden admitted softly, stepping slightly closer. "Yet strangely, I trust you, Alessandra. Against all reason, I find myself hoping you'll understand." She swallowed nervously, suddenly aware of their proximity. "And if I don't?" His eyes burned intensely, sincerity clear. "Then I'm doomed, both professionally and personally. But at least it will be an honest failure." In that charged moment, Alessandra felt herself drawn irresistibly closer, their breaths mingling softly, the space between them rapidly shrinking. Just as Holden leaned toward her, phone alerts erupted simultaneously from both their devices, breaking the spell abruptly. They pulled apart quickly, the intimate moment shattered by reality. Alessandra glanced at her phone, eyes widening. "It's everywhere," she whispered urgently. "The leaked information, every media outlet has picked it up." Holden's expression hardened swiftly into determination. "Then it's time to fight back openly." He grasped her hand tightly, eyes blazing with resolve. "Will you help me, Alessandra?" She nodded fiercely, heart racing. "Yes." In that moment, she realized with startling clarity that she'd begun crossing dangerous boundaries, no longer just a neutral observer but someone deeply entangled in Holden's life, his secrets, and possibly, his heart. Holden and Alessandra quickly returned to Hawthorne Tower, the tension between them still thick in the air. Alessandra felt acutely aware of the boundaries they'd nearly crossed, yet now, faced with the explosive scandal ignited by Dorian's betrayal, there was no time to dwell on personal feelings. Holden's expression had hardened into fierce determination, his eyes, previously filled with vulnerability, now flashed with calculated intensity. As they stepped into Holden's private office, Beckett already awaited them, visibly agitated. He paced anxiously by the floor-to-ceiling windows, repeatedly glancing at his phone. Seeing Holden, Beckett immediately approached, urgency etched into his features. "The board called an emergency meeting," Beckett informed them gravely. "Dorian convinced several key investors that you're unfit to lead." Holden's jaw tightened sharply, anger flaring briefly before he composed himself. "When?" "In an hour," Beckett answered, checking his watch nervously. "They aim to suspend you immediately, pending further investigation." Alessandra stepped closer, her voice firm yet reassuring. "Then we must act quickly. Holden, you need to publicly respond, show the world your transparency. Don't give them a chance to control the narrative." Holden turned toward her thoughtfully, appreciating her strength. "You're right. But if we fight publicly, Dorian may retaliate further." "You can't remain silent," Alessandra argued passionately. "It'll make you appear guilty. Trust the public's ability to judge fairly when they hear your side." Holden hesitated briefly, weighing the risks before nodding decisively. "Arrange a press conference immediately, Beckett. We'll address the media directly from here." Within moments, Holden's team mobilized. Alessandra watched closely as he prepared meticulously, drafting careful statements and coordinating responses. Observing him, she felt a newfound respect for his composed leadership even amid chaos. The press arrived swiftly, cameras and reporters crowding into the expansive lobby of Hawthorne Tower. Holden stepped forward confidently, Alessandra standing quietly at his side, a silent yet powerful symbol of support. The cameras flashed intensely, reporters clamoring eagerly for answers. Holden spoke firmly, clearly, voice resonant with unwavering authority. "Recent allegations regarding my investments are false and deliberately misleading. Unfortunately, the leaks came from within my own family, orchestrated by my uncle, Dorian Whitlock, who seeks to undermine both my reputation and our company's stability." Shocked whispers erupted throughout the room. Holden paused deliberately, allowing his revelation to sink in before continuing steadily. "I invite a full and transparent investigation into these claims. I have nothing to hide. My commitment remains solely focused on the success and integrity of Hawthorne Industries. Any questions?" Hands immediately shot upward. A reporter in the front row quickly asked, "Mr. Hawthorne, why would your uncle betray you?" Holden's eyes darkened briefly, but he answered calmly, professionally. "Greed and ambition sometimes blind even family. Dorian desires control, but his methods betray our company's values. I won't allow personal ambitions to destroy what we've built." Another journalist called loudly from the back, directing attention sharply to Alessandra. "Ms. Wilmore, your reputation is impeccable. Do you trust Holden Hawthorne? Will you stake your career on his innocence?" Every eye instantly turned toward Alessandra. Her heart raced fiercely, realizing her next words would profoundly impact Holden's future and her own. Feeling Holden's steady presence beside her, she inhaled deeply before speaking decisively. "Yes, I trust Holden completely," she affirmed clearly, voice unwavering. "I've closely examined the allegations, and I'm convinced they're malicious fabrications designed to undermine him personally and professionally." Her confident declaration visibly shifted the mood, reporters now openly murmuring with renewed intrigue. Holden glanced gratefully toward Alessandra, appreciation and admiration clear in his eyes. When the press conference concluded, Holden gently took Alessandra's hand, guiding her swiftly from the overwhelming frenzy back into the privacy of his office. As the doors closed behind them, he exhaled deeply, clearly relieved yet still troubled. "Thank you," he said softly, sincerity rich in his tone. "Your support means more than you know." Alessandra smiled faintly, feeling warmth spread through her at his genuine gratitude. "I meant every word, Holden. I see the truth in you." He stepped closer, their proximity instantly reigniting the earlier tension between them. Holden's voice lowered, becoming intimate, vulnerable. "No one has ever stood by me like this before. I've spent my life isolated, guarding myself fiercely. Yet somehow, you've broken through." Alessandra's heart pounded intensely, awareness of his nearness causing her breath to catch softly. "Maybe because I see beneath your carefully constructed walls," she whispered, barely audible. "I see who you truly are." Holden hesitated briefly, eyes tracing her face intently. Without further hesitation, he gently raised his hand, fingertips softly brushing her cheek, sending warmth flooding through her. "I don't deserve you," he murmured tenderly, genuine awe in his voice. Before Alessandra could respond, his lips gently captured hers, this time carefully, slowly, savoring each sensation with deliberate tenderness. Unlike their first impulsive kiss, this one held depth, raw emotion, honesty, trust. Alessandra surrendered willingly, her arms instinctively wrapping around his neck as she pressed closer, fully embracing the intimacy they both feared yet deeply craved. However, their tender moment abruptly shattered when Holden's phone buzzed sharply, insistent. Reluctantly breaking apart, Holden checked the message quickly, his expression darkening dangerously. "What happened now?" Alessandra asked nervously, recognizing instantly something serious had occurred. "It's Serafina," Holden answered gravely. "She found evidence in Dorian's office, emails proving he conspired directly with others to sabotage me. But before she could deliver the evidence safely, someone attacked her. She's in the hospital now." Horror flashed through Alessandra's eyes, understanding the stakes had escalated frighteningly. "Is she okay?" "Stable," Holden assured quickly, voice tight with anger. "But Dorian clearly won't stop. He's desperate and dangerous." Alessandra stepped forward, determination fierce within her. "Then we end this immediately. Let's take these emails directly to the police ourselves. We can't allow anyone else to get hurt." Holden nodded sharply, admiration clear in his gaze. "Agreed. But we must be careful. Dorian obviously anticipated this outcome." Together, they quickly left the office, carrying crucial evidence securely. Yet Alessandra couldn't shake the growing anxiety twisting within her. She had willingly plunged deeper into Holden's complicated world than ever intended, now facing very real threats and potential danger. But even amid uncertainty, she felt no regret, only fierce resolve to protect Holden, expose the truth, and finally end the ruthless manipulation haunting their lives. As they entered Holden's car, racing toward authorities, Alessandra knew with absolute certainty that she'd already crossed a line, one that transformed her connection with Holden from mere curiosity into undeniable, profound love. Now, determined to save him from betrayal, she vowed silently never to leave his side again, no matter what darkness awaited them ahead. Holden and Alessandra arrived at the police station late in the evening, the city's vibrant lights blurred by the drizzling rain that fell steadily, echoing their somber mood. Alessandra clutched the file containing damning evidence against Dorian tightly, feeling a strange combination of relief and anxiety. Beside her, Holden's expression remained rigid, carefully masking his turbulent emotions beneath a composed exterior. Once inside, Holden approached the desk confidently, requesting to speak with Detective Lucien Grant, a seasoned officer known for his integrity. Within minutes, the detective appeared, immediately recognizing Holden and casting a questioning glance toward Alessandra. Mr. Hawthorne, Lucian greeted evenly, offering a firm handshake. To what do we owe the late-night visit? Holden's voice was tense but clear. We have evidence implicating Dorian Whitlock in a serious conspiracy against me. He's also connected to an assault that occurred tonight against my assistant, Serafina Donovan. It's critical we speak privately. Detective Grant nodded solemnly, quickly leading them into a secluded interrogation room away from curious eyes. Alessandra handed over the documents carefully, explaining, "These emails clearly outline Dorian's intent and his efforts to sabotage Holden professionally and personally." Grant flipped through the pages swiftly, his face darkening with each line he read. Finally, he exhaled sharply, looking up at Holden with seriousness etched deeply into his features. "This is substantial. Enough for immediate action. We'll investigate promptly, but be prepared. Accusations against someone of Dorian's influence could lead to unexpected backlash." Holden's jaw tightened, voice firm with conviction. "I'm fully aware of the risks. I won't stand by while he harms others to achieve his ambitions." Grant nodded approvingly, rising swiftly. "Understood. I'll handle it immediately." Exiting the station, Alessandra released a shaky breath, relief briefly overcoming her anxiety. Yet Holden remained silent, clearly troubled despite their progress. She gently touched his arm, guiding him toward the waiting car. "Holden, talk to me. What's wrong?" He paused momentarily, glancing down at her with vulnerability in his emerald eyes. "This is far from over. Dorian won't quietly accept defeat. If anything, tonight will only make him more desperate." "You did the right thing," Alessandra reassured gently, squeezing his hand lightly. "We couldn't let him continue unchecked." Holden hesitated, conflict visible on his face. "I know. But I never imagined betrayal would come from someone I considered family." Feeling a surge of empathy, Alessandra moved closer, wrapping her arms around him in a comforting embrace. Holden stiffened briefly, startled by her unexpected gesture, before relaxing slowly into her warmth, his forehead gently resting against hers. "I won't let anything happen to you," Alessandra whispered fiercely. "You don't have to face this alone." Holden's eyes softened deeply, gratitude filling his gaze. "Your presence is the only thing keeping me grounded, Alessandra. Without you, I'd be lost." Returning to Holden's penthouse later that night, both were exhausted yet restless, aware that danger still lurked nearby. Despite their fatigue, neither found sleep easy, minds weighed heavily by fears and anxieties. Alessandra paced nervously near the expansive windows overlooking the city, watching rain steadily trickle down glass panes. Holden approached quietly, his reflection appearing beside hers. "You should rest," he urged softly. "Tomorrow might bring more challenges." She turned toward him, expression troubled. "How can I rest when I feel Dorian is still out there, planning his next move?" Holden reached out, fingertips lightly tracing her jaw, voice tender yet resolute. "Whatever happens, Alessandra, I'll protect you. Dorian underestimated us both, he won't succeed again." Feeling warmth spread through her at his intimate touch, Alessandra leaned into his hand slightly, eyes meeting his steadily. "I trust you completely, Holden." Their gazes locked intensely, unspoken emotions swirling fiercely between them. Slowly, Holden leaned forward, pressing his lips to hers gently at first, then deepening the kiss passionately. Alessandra surrendered willingly, their embrace growing more desperate, as though seeking reassurance in each other amidst uncertainty. As they reluctantly separated, Holden spoke softly, voice strained with raw vulnerability. "Stay with me tonight, please. I can't bear the thought of losing you." Alessandra nodded quietly, understanding his need perfectly. They held each other closely throughout the night, finding comfort and solace in shared closeness, each determined never to lose the other to threats or betrayal. Yet, morning brought fresh turmoil. Alessandra awoke abruptly, startled by a frantic knocking at the penthouse door. Holden moved swiftly, cautiously answering to reveal Beckett Kingsley, face pale and panicked. "What's wrong?" Holden demanded sharply, tension immediately returning. Beckett struggled to compose himself, voice shaking with urgency. "The police issued a warrant against Dorian early this morning, but he fled before they arrived. He's vanished entirely, Holden." Holden's expression darkened dangerously. "He's running now, but for how long?" Beckett hesitated briefly, casting a worried glance toward Alessandra before speaking gravely. "Before leaving, Dorian sent a message specifically addressing you, Holden. He threatened that everything you love will suffer for betraying him." A chill coursed through Alessandra's veins, fear evident in her eyes. Holden instinctively drew her protectively into his embrace, voice fiercely determined. "Then we finish this ourselves. We find him first." Despite Beckett's protests regarding safety, Holden refused to wait passively. He and Alessandra quickly organized efforts to trace Dorian's movements, desperate to prevent further harm. Hours later, their combined efforts produced a critical clue: a secluded property outside the city owned secretly by Dorian. Without hesitation, Holden and Alessandra raced toward the location, hearts pounding with anticipation. Upon arrival, they cautiously entered the remote estate, discovering signs of recent occupancy, evidence suggesting Dorian had hidden briefly before escaping again. Yet suddenly, Alessandra froze, noticing photographs pinned haphazardly across a nearby wall, images of herself, captured secretly over recent weeks, each marked ominously. Her pulse quickened rapidly, dread tightening sharply within her chest. Holden stepped closer, seeing the photographs clearly, expression hardening with protective fury. "He's targeting you specifically," he whispered harshly, voice shaking with rage. "He's planning revenge through you." Alessandra struggled to remain calm, breath trembling softly. "Why me?" "Because he knows hurting you hurts me deeply," Holden answered grimly. "Dorian intends to destroy what matters most, my heart." Holden grasped her hand firmly, determination fierce in his gaze. "I'll stop him, Alessandra. I promise." Alessandra held tightly to him, feeling renewed resolve flow through her. "We'll face him together, Holden. I won't let fear control us." Together, they swiftly left the property, fully aware now of the stakes. Alessandra understood clearly that her growing love for Holden had made her vulnerable, but instead of retreating, it only strengthened her resolve further. As they raced back toward the city, hearts united fiercely in determination, Alessandra silently vowed never to abandon Holden, even if it meant confronting unimaginable dangers ahead. Their bond, forged through trials and tested fiercely by betrayal, now felt unbreakable, strong enough, perhaps, to finally overcome the shadows threatening their happiness. The days following the discovery of Dorian's sinister intentions became increasingly tense. Alessandra felt as though a constant shadow loomed over them both, ever mindful that at any moment Dorian could strike again. Holden had intensified their security, ensuring Alessandra was never alone, yet he was visibly tormented by guilt, feeling personally responsible for placing her in harm's way. One morning, Alessandra sat in Holden's spacious penthouse office, attempting to distract herself by organizing notes and evidence they had gathered. Despite their preparations, she couldn't shake the persistent dread that had become her daily companion. Holden entered quietly, noticing her distant gaze fixed on the city skyline. Approaching gently, he touched her shoulder, pulling her from troubled thoughts. "You haven't slept much lately," he said softly, concern clear in his eyes. Alessandra smiled faintly, though exhaustion etched deeply into her features. "Neither have you." Holden exhaled slowly, sitting beside her, his expression heavy with remorse. "I brought this chaos into your life, Alessandra. You don't deserve this." She reached out instinctively, placing a comforting hand on his cheek, forcing him to meet her gaze. "Holden, none of this is your fault. You didn't choose betrayal, Dorian did. We'll get through this." He covered her hand with his own, pressing gently into her touch. "I never imagined I'd care this deeply about someone again. Now, the idea of losing you terrifies me. You won't lose me, she reassured firmly, determination blazing in her sapphire eyes. We'll face this together. Their moment was abruptly interrupted by the shrill ringing of Holden's phone. Answering quickly, his expression instantly darkened. Alessandra watched anxiously as his posture stiffened, eyes narrowing sharply. "We'll be right there," he replied curtly, ending the call and rising swiftly. Serafina regained consciousness. "She wants to speak with us immediately." They arrived at the hospital within minutes, tension palpable as they stepped into Serafina's private room. The young woman lay pale yet alert, determination clear despite lingering weakness. Seeing Holden and Alessandra, she managed a faint, grateful smile. "Serafina," Holden began gently, moving closer. "I'm so sorry this happened to you." She shook her head weakly, determination filling her eyes. "I'm okay, but there's something crucial you need to know. When Dorian attacked me, he wasn't alone." Holden's jaw tightened instantly. "Who was with him?" Serafina hesitated briefly, fear evident before continuing resolutely. "Beckett Kingsley. I saw his face clearly. Beckett's been working with Dorian all along." Shock rippled through Holden visibly, disbelief quickly replaced by fury. Alessandra's heart sank, recalling Beckett's frequent appearances, his apparent loyalty now exposed as deception. Holden's voice trembled with barely contained anger. "You're certain, Serafina?" "Absolutely," she affirmed softly. "I'm sorry, Holden. He betrayed you too." Exiting the hospital swiftly, Holden's rage radiated fiercely, fists clenched tightly at his sides. Alessandra placed a calming hand gently on his arm, attempting to soothe him. "Holden, we must act carefully now," she cautioned softly. "They want you to react impulsively, don't play into their hands." He paused briefly, shoulders rigid before slowly nodding. "You're right. But I trusted Beckett implicitly. His betrayal cuts deeper than Dorian's." Together, they swiftly returned to Hawthorne Tower, immediately securing Holden's private office. As Holden paced anxiously, Alessandra focused intently, piecing together the implications. "They must be planning something even more damaging," she murmured thoughtfully. "But what?" Holden halted suddenly, realization dawning clearly. "The board meeting scheduled tomorrow, Beckett arranged it. They're likely planning a final attempt to remove me entirely." Alessandra nodded gravely, urgency sharpening her voice. "Then we must act first, expose both publicly and decisively before they gain momentum." Resolute now, Holden began organizing evidence meticulously, Alessandra supporting him tirelessly. Their preparation continued late into the night, exhaustion overshadowed by determination to protect Holden's legacy and reputation. However, their focused work abruptly shattered when security alerts flashed urgently across Holden's computer screens. Footage revealed intruders rapidly approaching their private floors, Beckett and several unidentified men, clearly armed and dangerous. Panic surged within Alessandra, heart pounding fiercely as Holden quickly activated security lockdown measures. "They're coming for us directly," he growled urgently, grasping Alessandra's hand protectively. "We have little time, follow me." Holden swiftly led Alessandra through concealed passages built discreetly within Hawthorne Tower, winding deeper into hidden safety rooms designed specifically for emergency situations. Heart racing, Alessandra clung tightly to Holden, trusting implicitly his knowledge and instincts. Minutes later, securely barricaded within a reinforced safe room, Holden accessed hidden surveillance feeds, observing Beckett and his accomplices futilely attempting entry. Beckett's frustration quickly turned to desperation, knowing authorities would arrive shortly. Yet suddenly, Holden's phone buzzed insistently. Alessandra watched anxiously as he answered cautiously, eyes narrowing sharply. Beckett's cold voice echoed clearly through speaker mode, chilling them both. "Your precautions are admirable, Holden, but useless now. Dorian is waiting at your penthouse," he has someone you care deeply about. Come alone, or Alessandra pays the price. Fear gripped Alessandra sharply, realization dawning. Dorian intended to leverage her safety against Holden. Yet Holden's expression darkened fiercely, protective fury blazing intensely. You'll regret threatening her, he snarled dangerously before ending the call abruptly. Turning toward Alessandra, Holden grasped her shoulders urgently, determination clear in his eyes. Stay here securely. I'll handle this personally. No. Alessandra protested sharply, gripping his arm desperately. Holden, this is exactly their goal, to isolate you. He hesitated briefly, conflict evident. Alessandra, your safety. My safety means nothing without you, she interrupted passionately, determination blazing fiercely. We face them together, Holden. I refuse to lose you. Understanding clearly the depth of her resolve, Holden finally nodded decisively, grasping her hand tightly. Then stay close. We end this now. Together, they swiftly exited the building, arriving rapidly at Holden's penthouse, darkened ominously, awaiting confrontation. Stepping inside cautiously, Holden called out sharply, tension thickening dangerously. Dorian, show yourself. Slow, mocking applause echoed through shadows as Dorian emerged, Beckett close behind, weapon clearly visible. Dorian smirked cruelly, glancing deliberately toward Alessandra. Your weakness betrayed you, Holden, he sneered coldly. Now watch helplessly as your precious Alessandra suffers consequences. Holden lunged fiercely, struggling violently with Beckett as chaos erupted instantly. Amid violent confrontation, Alessandra moved swiftly, attempting escape, only for Dorian to intercept brutally, his grip painfully tight around her wrist. You're Holden's greatest weakness, Dorian whispered menacingly, weapon dangerously close. Now he'll finally suffer. Yet suddenly, Alessandra acted decisively, adrenaline surging fiercely. Striking sharply, she disarmed Dorian unexpectedly, weapon clattering away harmlessly. Simultaneously, Holden subdued Beckett decisively, authorities finally storming inside moments later. Breathing heavily, Holden swiftly embraced Alessandra protectively, heart pounding fiercely as danger finally receded. Are you hurt? He whispered urgently. No, she reassured softly, relief evident. You. Only emotionally, Holden admitted grimly, glancing toward authorities restraining Dorian and Beckett. But justice finally prevails. Together, exhausted yet victorious, Holden and Alessandra watched solemnly as threats vanished at last, their unbreakable bond strengthened profoundly by shared trials and fierce determination. Yet Alessandra knew clearly their fight wasn't over entirely, true peace required fully confronting lingering wounds. Still, tonight brought undeniable triumph and love powerful enough to withstand anything yet to come. In the aftermath of Dorian and Beckett's arrest, Holden and Alessandra slowly began to reclaim their lives, though the emotional scars of recent events remained. The city buzzed with news of the high-profile scandal, but Holden's decisive actions and transparent public handling of the crisis had strengthened his reputation rather than weakened it. Yet privately, Holden struggled deeply with the betrayal he had endured, particularly the pain inflicted by Beckett, whom he had trusted implicitly. One afternoon, Alessandra quietly entered Holden's penthouse to find him standing by the window, silently observing the sprawling city below. His tall figure was silhouetted against the fading sunlight, shoulders burdened by thoughts he kept hidden beneath carefully maintained composure. Alessandra approached gently, placing a hand softly upon his back, sensing clearly the torment that consumed him. You shouldn't keep everything inside, Holden, she murmured tenderly. Talk to me. He sighed deeply, shoulders relaxing slightly beneath her comforting touch. I trusted Beckett like family. I brought him into every private detail of my life. Realizing he'd deceived me all along, it's more difficult to accept than I imagined. She stepped closer, gently guiding him to face her. Her sapphire eyes searched his intently, offering empathy without judgment. You didn't make a mistake trusting him, Holden. He chose betrayal, not you. The blame lies with him. Holden studied her thoughtfully, genuine appreciation reflected in his emerald gaze. How did I survive before you, Alessandra? You're the clarity amid my chaos. She smiled faintly, cupping his face softly between her hands. Maybe because I see past the powerful CEO to the real man beneath, the one who's kind, thoughtful, vulnerable. The one I've fallen completely in love with. Holden's eyes widened slightly, startled by her open declaration. For a moment, he simply stared, vulnerability clear in his expression before finally whispering softly, "You love me?" She nodded sincerely, heart pounding fiercely yet unafraid. Yes, Holden, truly, deeply, unconditionally. He exhaled sharply, drawing her firmly yet gently against him, arms wrapping protectively around her as though afraid she might vanish if he loosened his embrace. I don't deserve you, he admitted softly, voice thick with emotion. But I'll spend every day proving myself worthy. Their lips met tenderly, this kiss filled with depth, sincerity, healing, far different from previous embraces born of urgency or danger. Alessandra melted willingly against him, understanding clearly this moment symbolized true commitment, genuine trust, and profound love. As days passed, Alessandra continued supporting Holden tirelessly, offering patience as he slowly processed emotional wounds left by betrayal. Simultaneously, Holden worked diligently to restore stability and trust within Hawthorne Industries, openly addressing concerns from investors and board members. His leadership, strengthened by recent trials, garnered renewed respect and loyalty company-wide. Yet despite outward progress, Alessandra sensed Holden still carried unresolved pain. Determined to help him fully heal, she quietly arranged a private meeting, inviting Serafina, now fully recovered and deeply grateful, to join her plan discreetly. That evening, Alessandra gently guided Holden into a quiet restaurant, intimately lit and secluded, where Serafina awaited calmly. Holden hesitated briefly, clearly startled yet appreciative of Alessandra's thoughtful gesture. Sitting together privately, Serafina spoke softly yet confidently, addressing Holden directly. I wanted you to know, Holden, I don't blame you for what happened. Beckett deceived us both. You always treated me with kindness, respect, integrity. Your trust wasn't misplaced, he betrayed it deliberately. Holden exhaled slowly, visible relief washing over his features. Thank you, Serafina. Hearing that helps more than you know. Serafina smiled warmly, glancing gratefully toward Alessandra before leaving discreetly. Alone again, Holden reached across the table, gently taking Alessandra's hand within his own, gratitude clear in his eyes. You knew exactly what I needed, even when I didn't. She smiled lovingly, squeezing his fingers reassuringly. Because I know your heart, Holden. I knew hearing her forgiveness would free you to forgive yourself. Holden sighed softly, visibly relaxing further, tension finally beginning to fade entirely. With you by my side, Alessandra, I truly feel whole again. Their romantic evening continued peacefully, sharing quiet conversations and intimate laughter, something rare and precious amid recent turmoil. Eventually, returning home together, they felt profoundly connected, strengthened by deepened trust and newfound emotional openness. However, arriving at Holden's penthouse, they noticed an envelope waiting prominently upon entry, addressed carefully in familiar handwriting, Dorian's handwriting. Alessandra's pulse quickened nervously as Holden cautiously opened the letter, expression hardening immediately upon reading contents. What does it say? She asked anxiously, stepping closer. Holden's jaw tightened sharply, anger evident as he showed her briefly. The note read simply yet ominously. You may have won this battle, Holden, but true peace eludes you until you uncover the real truth about your family. Ask yourself, are you really who you believe yourself to be? Confusion filled Alessandra's eyes, heart racing with uncertainty. What does that mean, Holden? He exhaled heavily, conflict visible in his gaze. I don't know. But clearly, Dorian intended to unsettle me deeply. Yet something in Holden's expression suggested deeper turmoil. Alessandra watched him carefully, intuition telling her he understood more than he admitted openly. Gently touching his arm, she urged softly, "Holden, if you know anything, please tell me." He hesitated briefly, eyes meeting hers intensely. "I've always sensed secrets surrounding my birth, something my family deliberately concealed. But I never pursued answers, fearing truths might be painful." Alessandra grasped his hand tightly, determination clear. "Then let's find answers together. You deserve to know your true identity." Reluctantly agreeing, Holden began discreet inquiries immediately, guided by Alessandra's steady encouragement. Days of careful research eventually led them to a hidden, secured archive containing Hawthorne family documents, a place rarely accessed, protected fiercely from prying eyes. Inside, late one night, Alessandra stood silently beside Holden as he carefully sifted through sealed records. Heart pounding anxiously, he finally uncovered official adoption papers, clearly stating that Holden had been adopted secretly as an infant by the Hawthorne family. Shock rippled visibly through Holden, realization dawning painfully. "I'm not biologically a Hawthorne," he whispered sharply, voice strained with raw emotion. Alessandra grasped him tightly, offering immediate comfort. "Biology doesn't define you, Holden, your actions, integrity, heart do. This changes nothing." He nodded slowly, struggling visibly with inner turmoil yet deeply comforted by her unwavering support. "You're right. But discovering this shakes everything I've known about myself." Holding him gently, Alessandra murmured soothingly, "Then let it shape something stronger, better, a future defined by truth, love, choice, not secrets." Holden finally smiled faintly, gratitude clear despite lingering pain. "With you, Alessandra, I can face anything, even my family's darkest secrets." Together, determined now to build their future openly, honestly, without shadows or uncertainty, they left hidden archives behind, stepping forward united, prepared fully for whatever truths still awaited discovery. In the weeks following Holden's revelation about his adoption, Alessandra stood unwaveringly at his side as they navigated the emotional complexities that arose from his newfound truth. The media quickly caught wind of Holden's biological origins, fueling speculation and curiosity throughout the city. But rather than hiding from scrutiny, Holden boldly embraced transparency, openly addressing the revelation, emphasizing that true family and identity came from love, choices, and integrity, not merely bloodlines. Yet privately, Alessandra sensed Holden still grappled deeply with unresolved emotions concerning his adoptive family's secrecy. Determined to bring him peace, Alessandra gently suggested reaching out directly to Holden's adoptive mother, Eleanor Hawthorne, to finally confront lingering questions. Reluctantly, Holden agreed, and soon afterward, Alessandra found herself sitting beside him in the elegant drawing room of the Hawthorne family estate. Eleanor entered quietly, her graceful presence carrying deep regret mingled clearly with nervousness. Meeting Holden's gaze directly, she spoke softly yet sincerely. "I never wanted you to learn the truth this way, Holden," Eleanor admitted quietly, tears shimmering in her eyes. "But I hope to shield you from unnecessary pain. Your birth mother asked us specifically to protect your identity until adulthood, fearing exposure might endanger you both." Holden exhaled slowly, emotions clearly conflicted. Who was she? Eleanor hesitated briefly before carefully revealing details previously hidden. "Your biological mother was Charlotte Everly, a remarkable, strong-willed woman who sacrificed greatly to ensure your safety. She entrusted you to us knowing your life with the Hawthorns would grant opportunities she couldn't provide." Holden visibly softened, absorbing her words deeply, finally understanding intentions behind secrecy. Alessandra gently touched his arm reassuringly as Eleanor continued earnestly. "We loved you deeply, Holden. Biology never determined family for us, only love. You've always been our son fully, completely." Moved profoundly by her sincere admission, Holden rose slowly, embracing Eleanor tenderly, forgiveness finally bringing closure to lingering wounds. Alessandra watched silently, heart swelling warmly at seeing emotional healing finally occur. In days afterward, Holden's demeanor shifted significantly, newfound peace and clarity shaping his actions decisively. Together, Holden and Alessandra turned their attention fully toward the future, understanding clearly their shared love had strengthened profoundly through trials endured together. One evening, Holden led Alessandra toward a private garden overlooking the city, a place intimately meaningful, symbolizing growth, renewal, hope. Bathed gently in twilight hues, Holden paused beneath softly glowing lanterns, turning toward Alessandra with solemnity yet tenderness in his eyes. "You entered my life unexpectedly, Alessandra, challenging everything I believed about trust, love, myself," he began quietly. "Because of you, darkness and betrayal transformed into strength, healing, hope. You've become the single greatest truth of my existence." Emotion welled visibly within Alessandra, heart racing fiercely as Holden carefully knelt before her, withdrawing from his pocket a small, velvet box containing an exquisite sapphire ring glinting brilliantly under delicate lights. "Will you marry me, Alessandra Wilmore?" Holden asked earnestly, vulnerability clear yet confident. "Will you share forever openly, proudly, built entirely upon truth, trust, unconditional love?" Tears spilled softly down Alessandra's cheeks, voice trembling gently yet certain. "Yes, Holden, absolutely, always." He rose swiftly, slipping the ring carefully onto her finger, sealing their commitment tenderly through a deeply meaningful kiss. Their embrace carried promises silently exchanged, of devotion unbreakable, unity unshakable, love profound enough to conquer any challenge ahead. Months later, Holden and Alessandra's wedding day dawned beautifully clear, ceremony held privately amid lush gardens overlooking tranquil waters, attended intimately only by closest family, friends, trusted colleagues. Eleanor stood proudly beside Holden, emotional healing evident entirely between mother and son. Exchanging vows beneath warm sunlight filtering gently through flowering branches, Holden gazed tenderly upon Alessandra, voice sincere yet firm. "With you, Alessandra, my past no longer defines me negatively, it strengthens me. You've given me courage, truth, unconditional love. Today, I promise lifelong devotion, unwavering loyalty, complete honesty, every heartbeat yours entirely." Alessandra smiled lovingly, voice clear despite emotional tears. "Holden, before you, my life pursued truth without truly understanding its full meaning. You've shown me real truth lies not just within facts, but within hearts, souls, courage, forgiveness, love unconditional. Today, forever, my truth remains entirely with you." Their vows exchanged powerfully, sealed tenderly through intimate embrace shared lovingly beneath sunlight witnessing their unity profoundly. Family and friends applauded warmly, joyful laughter mingling beautifully throughout celebrations afterward. As evening fell, Holden privately led Alessandra toward secluded gazebo draped elegantly beneath twinkling lights, overlooking peaceful waters shimmering softly beneath moonlight. Embracing tenderly, Holden whispered gently into Alessandra's ear, voice filled with profound gratitude, sincere emotion. "Without you, Alessandra, my heart remained silenced by pain, mistrust, isolation," he admitted tenderly. "Now, every heartbeat speaks clearly, of gratitude, strength, truth discovered entirely through your unwavering love." Alessandra smiled lovingly, gently touching his face beneath moonlight. "Holden, you awakened my heart to possibilities previously unimaginable, truth deeper, love stronger, happiness profounder than ever believed possible." Sharing tender kisses beneath moonlight, both understood clearly this moment symbolized completion, not merely of ceremony, but profoundly emotional journey undertaken together courageously, truthfully, faithfully. Yet suddenly, Holden gently stepped backward, eyes sparkling warmly yet mischievously beneath gentle lights. "There's something else important tonight, a final revelation I've discovered recently, purposely hidden until now." Alessandra watched curiously yet trustingly as Holden withdrew carefully sealed envelope from inner pocket, handing it gently toward her. Opening cautiously, Alessandra gasped softly upon discovering official records revealing something startling, deeply meaningful, documents confirming Charlotte Everly's own identity previously unknown to Alessandra herself. Reading details clearly outlined, realization dawned profoundly. Charlotte Everly had been Alessandra's beloved aunt, tragically separated from family years earlier, circumstances mysterious yet deeply mourned privately. Understanding clearly Holden shared biological ties directly to Alessandra herself, heart swelled warmly, emotionally overwhelmed yet beautifully meaningful. Holden, we're connected deeper than imagined, Alessandra whispered gently, tears shimmering warmly yet joyfully. Your biological mother was my aunt, family tragically lost yet now returned through you. Holden nodded lovingly, embracing her tenderly yet protectively beneath gentle light symbolizing renewal, hope profoundly. Our connection transcends mere love alone, its truth discovered beautifully through courageously confronting darkness together. Beneath moonlight glowing softly, Holden and Alessandra shared profound realization of fate's beautiful design, love binding them entirely, strengthened further through shared bloodlines unexpectedly discovered. Together, committed now openly, courageously, proudly, future awaited brightly, filled entirely with possibilities previously unimaginable, shaped profoundly through truth discovered, embraced unconditionally, forever.